Coming up next.
It's not getting easier to protect our privacy online because the technology is being designed to make it easier for your privacy to be exposed. The data collection techniques that they use is very invasive, and therefore the efforts they need to apply to protect that information is obviously a lot bigger.
Hi there and welcome to this podcast. I am Andrea Locker.
And I'm Diana Ayo. Thanks for tuning in. On the Afro Tech Talk podcast, we speak to tech experts, individuals in the tech space, as well as young people about the latest trends and innovations in Africa to explore how tech is transforming their society. We filter our guests' profound insights into actionable guidance, empowering listeners to find inspiration and actively participate in the ongoing tech revolution.
If you are new to the show or would want to recommend our podcast to your friends and family, our starter packs are a great place for you to get hooked. We understand that it can be a bit hard to get started, so for this, we have our episodes segmented into different topics that will have you started right away. Visit afrotechtalk.africa.
Welcome to the final episode of our 3-part series on privacy. Today, we conclude our series with Geoffrey, who will guide us through practical steps to safeguard our privacy in the digital realm. If you have not listened to the first and second episodes, we recommend you check them out. Geoffrey, I would like to understand from you, what are some fundamental practices individuals can adapt to safeguard their online privacy?
This is a course on its own. And it's not easy to really give it all the justice that it deserves, but I'm going to try my best here. It's not getting easier to protect our privacy online because the technology is being designed to make it easier for your privacy to be exposed. The data collection techniques that they use is very invasive, and therefore the efforts they need to apply to protect that information is obviously a lot bigger. But here are some tips. Now, don't take these tips as being exhaustive. At the same time, don't hold any of us accountable that, oh, I did this, but I still got compromised. It's a series of tips, and there is no one size fits all. You just have to be vigilant depending on your situation. So first of all, get educated about online privacy. Don't take it for granted. Just get some learning. There's lots of learning. There's all kinds of good people out there who have good material online and in other places. Get educated. Then again, don't provide your contact details at sites that in your view don't need that contact detail. So if you're going to be doing something online and the site is asking for your phone number, just ask yourself, do they need my phone number to provide the services that I'm going to consume? Have a disposable email address that you can use that doesn't link your real email address, so you use those ones to sign up on those sites. Again, there are many places you can get that. One of them is duck.com. You go there, you register, you say, okay, so my real email address is this one, but can you generate for me a fake one that I can use for other sites? So then what they do is every time an email comes from whichever site you've registered with a duck address, it filters out all the tracking information and then forwards to you the email. So that way they don't know that you clicked on the email. They don't know whether it was delivered or not. So basically it obfuscates your email address. Limit the amount of information you share on social media. For example, you don't have to provide your real birthday. Okay, you don't have to, they just make it easier for you to provide it that, oh yeah, so somebody can wish you happy birthday and so on and so on. That's all crap. You can do without your real birthday at social media sites. Limit the material you post about your family, about yourself. These are all things that if you post them out there, then anybody can glean that information and use that for whichever whichever things they want to do. Think about material you post online before you post it. So apart from just limiting the material, think about it. Do you really want to tell the world this story? Because that's what you're doing. You're telling the world the story. Do you want to do that? Don't tag people without their consent, because when you tag somebody, then now you have given the system Authorization to basically connect that person to all kinds of other things that are associated with that tag. Don't do that. And also tell people not to tag you unless they ask you. These are very basic things, but you want to do those things. You want to also avoid certain types of sites. I mean, sites like gambling, get rich quick sites, pornographic sites. You want to avoid those sites because those sites are full of malware and mechanisms by which they want to extract as much information from you as possible, and they just drive you down a rabbit hole. Don't go there. Minimize browsing on your phone because your phone identifies you in very intimate ways, unlike your laptop. So minimize browsing from your phone, particularly clicking on links that have been sent to you, from maybe unknown locations, etc., from your phone. Try and minimize that. Protect your phone with a PIN or a password and make it difficult to guess. So passcodes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I mean, really, we shouldn't be doing that. Or 0, 0, 0, 0. We shouldn't be doing those kind of things. Take a bit more time to select your PIN, and also be aware of your surroundings when you're typing your PIN. Some of the ways where pins are compromised is somebody just stands over you when you're typing your PIN. Okay, so now they know your PIN. So when they steal your phone, now they already know your PIN. And if it is an Apple iPhone, you are really in trouble because everything is connected to your Apple ID. And that PIN is what protects all of those things. It can become very, very difficult to recover from that. Use strong passwords and a password manager. So a password manager takes in your strong passwords and then it protects them with a single password. So you only have to really remember one password. So choose a password manager carefully. Again, look around your surroundings when you're typing your password. Do not click on links that come from unfamiliar email because maybe they're trying to get some information out of you. Now, if you happen to click on a link and it takes you to a place and says, log in with your credentials, be very, very careful because chances are it might be a phishing site and you're better off, asking somewhere before you put in details, because then once they steal your credentials, then it becomes very difficult to recover from that. SMS scams are also becoming a big deal. So you get an SMS which comes almost as an MMS with a link. So again, avoid clicking on links that come to you by SMS because those tend to be either marketing links, but they could also download malware on your phone. Limit your use of public computers, and if you are using a public computer, switch to incognito mode if you can, so that it doesn't retain material on the computer. Your ISP will still know your detail, but at least that local computer will have minimal information about you. Then again, there are certain places, particularly in Uganda, you have internet cafes that fill for you your URA, TIN details, and all of those kind of things. Avoid those because if they do it for you, they normally save that information. That information is very detailed about you. Either do it yourself if you don't have a computer at home, and just make sure that you don't leave any trail of information there. If you can, use a VPN, either on your phone, on your laptop. Again, these when you use a VPN, realize that the VPN provider knows everything about you, but at least you've narrowed it down to one party. So if you trust that party, then that's a good thing. So those are some of the tips that I would advise. But again, they're not exhaustive. And again, it's up to the person to kind of evaluate their circumstance and determine what works best for them.
Wow, that's amazing. How can we also strike a balance between utilizing digital services and maintaining our privacy?
Yeah, this again is difficult to prescribe because there is really no one size fits all. But maybe some of these could help. At the very least, think whether you need to consume the digital service. Okay, so do I really need to consume this service? If you do, then you're really stuck with their privacy policy, because then now it is up to what their privacy policy says that now governs your interaction with them. You may want to look at that privacy policy. I know nobody reads these things, but there are a few things that you can look at in a privacy policy that will give you an idea of to whether or not you really want to do this. So when you look at the privacy policy, look at what they do with the data, look at where they store the data, look at things like, do they share that information, and so on and so on. So look at those things. Look at whether you have the right to be forgotten, for example, whether the privacy policy provides for that. Because the moment you have submitted your information to them. Now it is governed by their privacy policy. So your decision to strike that balance between utilizing a digital service and maintaining your privacy is that fine balance between what will they do with the information that I give them and how much do I need to consume this service. If it is a government service, you're stuck. You have to consume it. You deal with it, But the government has a privacy policy, which is actually quite stringent. The question is whether they actually, apply the rigor that is needed to enforce it, to make it, actually protect that privacy. Again, at the end, you are stuck with whichever mechanism they use. If they put your information in a spreadsheet or in some unprotected database, that's it. That's how they've done it. And that could potentially compromise your privacy.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey. Now, you mentioned something about, our phones being our first line of defense when it comes to our privacy online. Yeah. So we would also want you to just guide us through some practical steps that we can actually, take in order to make sure our personal devices are more secure, and then also how we could, maybe limit in a way how these third parties get to share our data.
Yeah, again, this is a course by itself. Each one of the questions you're asking are very important questions, but they require so much material to be shared and gone through that each one of them is a course by itself, pretty much. So again, this is not exhaustive. At the end, you are responsible for your own security. So anyone who's listening to this podcast, understand that you're responsible for your own security. You can't say, oh, well, you see, the podcast told me this, and therefore, I did it and it still happens to me, etc., etc. No, you're responsible for your own security and for your own safety, whether it's online or anything else. And this is really provided for educational purposes only. So first of all, protect your device with a password or a passcode at the very, very least, and if your device allows you to use biometrics. You see, my personal preference is to use a fingerprint rather than a face recognition. That is just my personal preference, because I think that it exposes me a little less, and because I have 10 fingers, you see, so I can use any one of them, you see, but you have only one face. If you use face recognition, it's just one face. So if that information leaks out, that's your face that is gone, you see. But so I choose a finger that I'm going to use, and I don't choose the usual ones, you see. So that's that. Then I also proposed earlier that you should use a password manager. The reason why using a password manager makes sense is because there are just so many passwords that we now need to remember, and you don't want to use the same password everywhere, because if you use the same password everywhere, if it's compromised in one place, that means it's compromised everywhere else. So use a password manager. Then in building your passwords, don't use words that are in the dictionary. And you can build some very strong passwords, for example, by using words in our language. You see, so some of my passwords are in level up. You see, so who knows what it is? You see, and it even makes it more secure, because if you add capitalization and maybe a number here, etc., it becomes a very strong password, but it's very easy for you to remember. You see, then for things like bank accounts and other sensitive accounts, try using what is called a double-blind password. Now, I'm going to give the listeners of this podcast homework. Go and Google what a double-blind password is, because it's kind of a bit complicated to explain it. But this makes it very, very secure. So even if your password is exposed, that's not your password. That's part of the blindness of the password, but it prompts you to know what the password is, and the password is in your head. And it's easy to work out, but it's something that is very, very strong. Then again, particularly for phones, you want to install only the apps that you need to have. Don't just install any app because somebody told you, oh, this app is, and you install. Your phone is full of apps that you never use, but each one of those apps is busy tracing you, tracking you, and doing stuff with you that you don't really necessarily agree with, but you don't know, because it just happens to be that it goes everywhere with you. It does all these kind of things. So that's the other thing. Then finally, to protect your data from going to third parties, create, like I said earlier, a dummy email account, and there's places there. You can create them for free, and they manage that for you. So all you need to do is just get that dummy address, that dummy email address, sign up with it, wherever it is that you sign up. It's disposable. After you're done with whatever it is that took you there, you can dispose of it. It does not exist in real life, and that kind of keeps you from being, harassed by these guys with adverts and email and all of those kind of things. But at the same time, means that your real email address is protected.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey. You hinted on apps, and that caught my attention because you have these apps all over the place. Personally, I have so many apps that I have not opened in a while. So I would just love to also understand from you, how can individuals manage the trade-off, between convenience and privacy when using these apps and other digital services?
It's a very personal decision because if an app that you are using provides you convenience, that's obviously something that you want to be using because maybe it makes your I don't know what app you'd be thinking about, but for example, I use Google Translate a lot because I live in a foreign country that doesn't speak English. So sometimes, I get a document in the foreign language. So then Google Translate becomes very important to me. But what I do is I limit the kind of permissions it has. So for example, it can only use my microphone when I'm using the app. Okay. And then once I exit the app, it stops using the microphone. It does not use my location because it doesn't need to know my location when I'm doing a translation, you see, but it will insist that it wants it. No, you take it out, you see. So that depends on the features of the operating system that you're using in your phone. If your phone allows, for example, for that to happen, then yeah, you can limit it. So take time to limit the permissions that apps ask for. Because when an app installs, it will say, I need access to this. Okay, fine. Allow it, because if you don't allow it, it will refuse to install. So allow it, then immediately it has installed, go back and remove all those permissions that it was asking for. It will continue to work, because it didn't need those permissions. For example, your weather app doesn't need to read your email and to make phone calls. So you go and remove all of those permissions. It will still check the weather for you. It will still do all those things for you. So I think the trade-off between, convenience and the use of this is something personal. If you use apps like Signal, for example, which is about, secure IM messaging, and it's very good. Now, it is free, but at the end of the day, nothing is for free. So when Signals, if you're using Signal, it will ask you, do you want to donate? Donate to them if you can, because it helps to finance the operation. At the same time, it helps to protect your identity. So it's a very fine balance. It's something that you need to ask yourself, as I said before, do you really need this? Do you need it perpetually? Or once you're done with it, you uninstall it and you move on with something else? That's the very fine balance, and there's no real one size fits all, and there's no real one right answer, as it were.
Okay, those were really, really thoughtful, Geoffrey. Now, our last question for you, and then we can actually let you go. Is could you share strategies for educating and empowering the younger generations to prioritize and safeguard their online privacy effectively?
I think if you follow the strategies in these podcasts, because we talked a lot of things in these 3 series, if you follow those, you should have enough knowledge, to be effective. But like I said, it's never really 100%, you see. So there is online tips and tricks similar to this. Those that are on YouTube. YouTube itself is kind of problematic. I personally don't use YouTube because it just collects a lot of information about you, etc., etc. I use something called NewPipe, which is kind of like a YouTube clone, and there's tons of them out there. Do a bit of research and educate yourself. Be deliberate about learning. Identify the thing that you want to learn about and go and find that material. There is material online. Some of them are paid. Yeah, some of them are free. That's okay. But whatever it is that you glean will be useful towards helping you achieve your privacy goals. And speak to people. There are people who know stuff. I mean, for example, now yourselves, Andrew and Diana, you now kind of are a bit more aware. Speak to people who know these things. Ask questions. And learn as much as you can, because education is the single biggest advantage that you have. Once you are educated, then now you know, and you don't make those mistakes again. If you make the mistakes, try and recover as quickly as possible. Change your password. If your MFA asks you to validate it and yet you did not ask for it, you are not logging into it. It means somebody has stolen your password. So just knowing that alone means I will deny this access. I will go and change my password immediately because somebody has my password. That's why my MFA is asking me to validate when I have not asked it to log me into that place. Those kind of things. I think that those are strategies that if you employ, listening to this three-part series and getting yourself some more additional education, you should be a lot better protected online.
Amazing. I've personally learned a lot from this. I think it has been very insightful, and this episode has been one of my best, I would say. But just as we conclude this, Geoffrey, I would love to know from you, are there any legal frameworks or regulations that are there regarding protecting our digital privacy?
Yeah, there is. So lately, every country has been coming up with it. So Uganda has the Data Protection and Privacy Act of 2019, which NIST spun out. It is very detailed in what describing, the protections that are necessary, the obligations that those who hold that information have towards protecting that data, how they're disclosed, etc., etc. At the end of the day, legislation is down to a couple of things. Number one, it's down to the morality of the people who wrote it. It is down to the efficacy of their enforcement of that, and whatever technologies they use for that. And then it is also down to, what kind of, what I normally call the stake. What recourse is there for those who violate it? You see, because it's possible for you to have the regulation, you violate it, and then you pay your way out of it, or you argue your way out of it, and you violated it. You see, now in the EU, they have the GDPR, which is kind of considered to be the gold standard. The reason why it works is because if you're doing business in the EU and you're found to be violating it, the fine is so heavy that people who are doing business in the EU want to obey the law because they want to continue to remain in business, because they know if they are found, they're in trouble. I mean, Google has been in trouble, Facebook has been in trouble, HPE has been in trouble. All these guys have been in trouble in EU, and but because they want to do business, number one, they'll pay the fine, and number two, they will not violate it again to the greatest extent possible. So yes, those regulations do exist. Each country tends to have them. So you may want to go and look, and it's online. It's in the NIST site. You just go find it, just do a search for it. You'll find the Data Protection and Privacy Act of 2019, and just go through it. You'll find that it actually has a lot of good material. The question is it enforceable? And is it, are the people who get caught, are they then subjected to the punishments that have been stipulated therein? So that's really what matters, because at the end, if a company is found to be violating it and they walk away scot-free, then it's there, yes, but it's not effective.
Thank you so much, Geoffrey. So, Dana, did you enjoy this series?
I definitely did. This has been one of my most insightful episodes. And of course, I would encourage our listeners that missed out the first and the second episode to make sure they go back and listen to these episodes. Geoffrey, it's been very good having you on this podcast. Thank you for making time to just come and speak to our listeners, enlighten them and bring some of these, unresolved or unknown issues to table, and giving a little bit of, or more, a lot of clarity about this. We appreciate. Andrew?
I completely share with Diana in this. Thank you so much, Geoffrey. And to our listeners, please do check out our first episode and the second episode. They are just a wealth of knowledge. Until next time. That was our conversation with Geoffrey Okao from Afrotech Talk. This is the last part of our 3-part series on privacy.
To read more about online privacy, we recommend reading Why Privacy Matters by Neil Richards and Industry Unbound, The Inside Story of Privacy, Data and Corporate Power by Aris Rowaldman. And just in case you have not yet subscribed to this podcast, please do subscribe, like, share, and follow on the different platforms.
This podcast is hosted and directed by Andrew and Diana, edited and produced by Marifa Sasa Studios for Afro Tech Talk.